we can remember the future and we can remember the past. And there's infinite versions of all of these things when we create this divine template that's known as ourselves. We wrote in there everything that we wanted to experience. So essentially, the game of life is to actively participate in what we already wrote in our template.
Allison Holley, welcome to Passion Harvest. Really excited for our conversation today.
Hi, Luisa. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's a pleasure. I can't wait to get started. I'm really looking forward to this, and it's one of my favorite topics. So, first, I'd love to start for the audience in 2012, your awakening that occurred.
Yes. So, my awakening was sort of catapulted by this experience of going through a breakup and also losing my voice for about 6 months. And I was teaching fitness classes. So, losing my voice, it was going in and out for the full 6 months. And it was enough to get my attention, right? Because when we're kind of moving through these human layers, sometimes it takes a lot to get our attention. And so, yeah, losing my voice on and off for about 6 months was pretty intense. The other layer of that was I also threw my neck out. So I had these two injuries, these two issues right here in the throat chakra area. But back then I didn't really know anything about that. So I went to a naturopath and I said, I'm dealing with all of these different things. There was sort of a knowing that there was maybe more to the story. And she had me fill out a chart. And on the chart, it was body based. And she said, I'm seeing three different areas or three different issues right here in the throat chakra. And she said, I believe this means that you need to speak your truth. So that is really what catapulted so much of this transformation for me. I started speaking my truth by ending relationships. And when I did that, all of the sudden, things really opened up for me. When I tell people about my awakening, for a long time, I really thought that everyone had awakenings that were this intense. And working with a lot of people, I've realized that everybody goes through a very different process. Probably mine needed to be intense again to get my attention. So, what happened during this awakening was as a result of so many emotional upsets in my life and so many things shifting, everything started to open up in my energetic field. So, what that looked like was I actually felt the experience of my crown chakra opening. And I felt, really mostly these upper chakras opening. I started experiencing spontaneous channeling. So I had this pressure that would sort of push on the top of my head. And the first couple times that it happened, I could feel that there was a message coming through. And I was driving both times. So I'd pull my car over and close my eyes so that I could really tune into what was coming through. And it would just rapid fire through my voice. So all of these really powerful messages came through. My second time spontaneously channeling, what was coming through at that time was actually visions of earth changes, which we're currently experiencing, which is why I felt that this was so timely. Much that happened during my initial blow open of awakening was giving me cues and clues for what my purpose would be moving forward, sort of as a channel and a messenger for these really powerful, difficult, uh, rapidly shifting changes that we're experiencing now, not just on the physical level, but on all of the experiences of our multidimensional selves. So the other thing that started happening during my initial awakening was I would move through time very differently. So there were times when time would speed up or slow down. It was very, very interesting. And it really taught me that time is not static, that this is something that we experience as we have different unfoldings in our human experience, but it is not static from the higher perspective. And my initial awakening was so intense that for about 3 months, it felt like I was on a psychedelic journey. Colors were shifting, nothing felt solid. I was completely sober, but it was a very intense thing to navigate, as you can imagine. Another powerful thing that happened during this time was I would see symbols and number synchronicities. But what would happen is if I would see a symbol, for example, the infinity symbol was really showing itself to me at that time. And I would see the infinity symbol on a poster or something like that. And everything within me, it felt as if a gong was being hit over my head. It wasn't like, oh, that's really cool, or whoa, that's something to pay attention to. It was full body activation. And same with number synchronicities. There would be times where seeing a number synchronicity would shift my internal state so much that I would have to sit down. It would go into a full-blown psychedelic visionary experience. So it was really, really powerful, really intense. And again, it served in taking me from kind of going down this lane to shifting lanes and saying, wow, there's no denying this. Something's really happening with me. And I couldn't live my old life. I couldn't live the way that I had been before. There was just really no going back.
It happened with a bang.
Yeah, it came out. It came out.
So what are you channeling?
Mm. I love this question because the landscape of what we know as channeling is really shifting as well. As the collective we're raising our vibration. So I'll say that when I channel, I connect to the highest aspect of myself and I channel information from that multidimensional realm, which is sort of like going up on a mountaintop and being able to see and witness, not just visually see, but witness the landscape beyond just the third dimension, beyond just our physical experience. And I also have conversations when I'm in this space. So I will connect with my star family from Andromeda. I will connect with other beings, other ascended masters, different collectives, star family collectives. So I connect with a lot of beings and I say I have a conversation. When I'm channeling, I don't ever fully lose consciousness. I go into a state of deep presence. So I'm always right here. And a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm translating all of the pictures, all of the sensations, and all of the knowing and downloads and information into words. So when I first started channeling, it was a combination of sometimes it would be word for word for word, and other times it would be I'm having a vision and I would be describing it. So it started that way and it's just continued to broaden as I get more comfortable going into those realms.
Yes, it's almost like tapping into that infinite field of consciousness. It's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes.
You spoke about time and the relationship with time. What do you mean by things slowed down and sped up and the whole concept of time? How did that look for you?
It was wild. And it has been, I don't think that I've ever had an experience that was quite like that initial experience since then, but I have learned how to play with time a bit more. But what it looked like was, I remember I was sitting in a room, I was part of a performance group, and so we were having rehearsal, and I was sitting watching everyone rehearse, and everything went into slow motion all of a sudden. And what I was witnessing at the same time as that slow motion experience was I was witnessing the energetic projections of the people in the room. So their thought forms, their maybe not as solid as thought, right? So thought exists just beyond the physical, and then it would be sort of their energetic and their overall template. So different energetic forms would be emitted from them, and I was witnessing it, but I was witnessing it all in slow motion. And then a little bit into this whole scene unfolding in slow motion, things sped up and went into fast motion. So it really was like if you were giving my age, but if you were watching like a VHS where we used to have to hit the button to rewind and fast forward, it would be like that. So it was like hitting fast forward or slow motion on a video, player. But it was happening in real time, right? So to speak, it was happening, unfolding right in front of me. Um, it was very powerful because what I've learned since then is that we exist in multiple dimensions at once. The dimension that we're the most conscious of is our physical self. And then we're also very conscious of our thoughts and our emotions, which exist just on the plane above the physical, vibrationally speaking. And time is something that is created in the denser layers of reality. When we're in our full self, when we're in our higher self, all is now, right? So we've heard of, the power of now and things like that. Everything is now. But in the human experience, we get to sort of play with time and space, which means we experience events happening based on the energetic unfolding of uh, the learning and the progression over experiences. It's kind of difficult to explain, but time isn't static, time is not linear. And so, what I was shown at that moment, as my vibration was rapidly increasing, I was able to sort of witness the stretching and the compression of events. And that's what we call time. So it was just much more malleable in those moments.
Thank you. And also, I mean, I can't wait to hear your channeling, but you talk about incredible visions that you see for the future of humanity. Does that mean when we talk about time that past, present, and future is all now? It just
Yeah.
hasn't unfolded now what we perceive as our reality?
Yes. So I'm going to back up and go a little bit into our divine template.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to back up a little bit further and say that everything in our existence is a projection from our God self through ourselves into what we call the world or reality. So the way that it works is we are all projections of source. Source is sort of this big orb of everything. And we are projections from source. We are projections of light from source. That's why I say also that everyone is a channel, because in order to be embodied, in order to have an animated experience, we're channeling our higher self, we're channeling our soul template, we're channeling our soul through this divine template and into it's animating this experience for us. So we think that there's a world out there and that it's somehow separate from us, but that's only because of the illusion that occurs as we come into denser and denser layers of reality. As our full self, God self, is channeled into denser and denser layers of reality, that light, that source of light, sort of fractalizes and becomes the perception of separation. It starts to exist because we perceive ourselves as separate. We're little rays, essentially, but we're still God. So it is both one and all of these individual experiences. So the way that time is part of this experience of channeling source light into the human realms of separation. In order to believe ourselves to be individual, we have to feel separate from each other, from this table, from that over there, from God. We have to feel that separation because we want to have a unique experience. So here's how time comes into all of that. I know that I'm going all over the place, but it's when we haven't been taught this from the beginning, it's sort of such a huge concept that I want to explain the whole landscape of it. So the way that time is created is we are so much in the dense layers of reality that we believe that we are separate from each other, but also separate from ourselves. So essentially, before we incarnate, we create a divine template for our soul to channel through. And this divine template has everything written in it. It has who we want to be, our purpose, what we desire to experience and learn, but it's all on an energetic perspective. So we're channeling source light into this divine template and then beaming that out into what we call the world. That separation, the separation of individuation, also creates the separation from different aspects of ourself. So I am separate in my individuation. I am separate from my future self, and I'm separate from the creation of my past self. This is how we sort of experience this unfolding over time. I kind of want to check in and see if this is making sense and if I'm missing anything. Okay, good. So as we start to unfold our experiences of ourself, that is what creates the perception of time. This moment right now contains everything. When each of us have this, many of us have had this experience, and all of us are capable of having this experience of going into such deep presence that we don't feel separate any longer, because we're in such deep presence that what happens is we can actually see and feel and know in that present moment all of it. We know ourselves in the fullest version of ourselves. And we can also see that we're not sort of attached to this linear timeline, but that when we go into that space of all is now, we can remember the future and we can remember the past. And there's infinite versions of all of these things, but there's a proclivity towards specific things. So when we create this divine template that's known as ourselves, we wrote in there everything that we wanted to experience. So essentially, the game of life is to actively participate in what we already wrote in our template, to remind ourselves, this is what I wanted to experience, and now I'm going to experience it. So this is how time gets a little more solidified. It is the experiences that we wrote within our template that we then remember and reenact. We have infinite choice, and we are going to desire to choose what we wrote in our template. That's how it's built. The template is based on desire. That's how we remember what's in the template. What do we desire? And when we follow that, it's going to unfold with what we wrote for ourselves. Now, when we follow our highest desires, meaning the desires that are based on love and expansion and joy, those things that feel actually very natural to us when we tune into it, that's when we unfold the highest timeline. But nothing is ever static. So even if the propulsion of light that I'm currently projecting moves me in a specific direction, now, if I change my internal state, that is going to move me in a slightly different direction. So if I'm operating on fear, then everything that is projected through me is going to skew that internal divine template a little bit to move more toward fear. And actions and different events will happen based on that. If I change my internal state to being more navigating towards love, because my internal state is one of abundance and love and really the original design of who I am, then all that's going to be projected through me is going to be more of that love. And we will witness the timeline of this divine structure being moved through with love. So everything is very malleable and shiftable. And we are inevitably going to choose what was built within what we truly desire.
That was a beautiful way of explaining it. So following our template, love, positivity, we're allowing ourselves to move to the highest timeline. For those that you spoke about our template, our blueprint, for those that say, I don't have any passion, I don't know what my desires are, what's your advice?
Mhm. We're all built with desire. It's just that we learn to tamper it down because we're taught as we go into denser and denser layers that we're taught about duality. So essentially, we're taught that there is right and there is wrong. And internally, this feeling of separation from our God self, we sort of always feel that something's wrong. And so, it's kind of a wild experience. And through that experience of feeling separate from ourselves, we start to freeze. We kind of go into freeze mode. We think anything I do is just somehow not enough. And so we train ourselves to not follow that initial spark of desire. And we can also kind of loosen up the definition of desire, because desire isn't necessarily, oh, I really have a desire to walk 10,000 miles, or I really have a desire to, make $100,000 today, or whatever it is. It's less of an action and it's more of an experiential feeling. It starts with an energy within us, a sort of light, because what a desire really is it's opening our template to the light that's pouring through us. And so anything that we feel this sort of spark of joy, and then we're sort of it's sort of like a very pure hunger, right? So this light illuminates within us. Ooh, that's nice. Ooh, I like that, because it's light shining through our divine template. And then we just continue moving in that direction. What lights you up? That's the simplest way to describe desire, is what lights you up. And then you can continue. Some people have very specific desires. I will say this: when I've started exploring our human template, our divine template, and I describe this a little bit in my book, that there are open templates and specific templates. There are people who came to the planet with a very open template, which means that they are really here to experience being human. And there aren't necessarily divine meeting points or juncture points for them, or specific goals that they have, or things that they wanted to be or do or experience. It can be very open. And then I would say most of the people who are going to be watching your show have a specific template. And these are the people that I encounter the most as well. Specific template people may have very several or a lot of very specific things within their template. And I'm one of those people. And that's why I've received, numerous visions of the future, because this is helping me remember what I signed up for. Very specific things, specific people to meet, specific moments in the landscape of time, specific unfolding, specific energies that I would carry. So so our desires might be as simple as, I love existing and I want to be out in the sun. And it could be, I know that I am meant to, be a channel or an energy worker or something like that. And that desire, just, man, it won't quit. When we have a desire and it's strong, sometimes it's overwhelming because it's so big. And so we just, we take one step at a time, but following those desires, it really is our divine blueprint. It's who we came here to be.
And thank you. And taking action as well.
Mm-hmm. And that action can feel really easy and really good. Again, what makes the action feel so confounding is this perception that we're, really immersed in, which is that we are separate. and that therefore we're wrong, right? Original sin. There's a lot of this teaching in religions around somehow we're born imperfect. And that comes from, well, we incarnated as separate beings, but we know that we're God. We know that we're part of all of that. Internally, something inside of us always knows that. And so when we're born in this realm of separation, we're internally always questioning what's going on. This kind of doesn't feel right. So the feeling of separation is what makes us feel that things are difficult, or that it's difficult to follow our desires, because what we're really doing is we're questioning, is it okay for me to even exist, let alone do what feels really good, what lights me up? We just question a lot of that based on the dualistic structures that we're currently immersed in.
And fear.
And feel it's very real.
Fear.
Oh, fear. Yes.
Sorry, it's my accent.
Yes, it's very real. It's very real when we're in it. It's a visceral experience. We're taught fear and we experience it, you know. We are incarnated into an experience where there is a beginning and an end. We do have, you know, go through the birth canal and incarnate into human form, and then we do die. So that's a very real representation of, look, time does exist. It exists in these realms. We're here to have an experience of separation. But what we can do is start to give ourselves the gift of consciousness within the realms that are beyond separation, and start to learn how to navigate our human experience from that higher perception, because we are experiencing separation here. We are experiencing the fear based on our mortality, but we can also start to see it from that expanded higher perspective and go, okay, so in this lifetime I can die, but the truth is that I'm eternal. And from that eternal perspective, how can I navigate my human experience? How can I be more open and free? And that's really when things start to flow. We start to take what seems to be very real, we take that a little less seriously. We're less invested and attached in it. And we're more able to navigate with that openness and freedom. That's truly who we are.
It's almost like we have to relearn how to do that.
Oh, yeah. And I will say that from a channeled perspective, it is so joyful to learn all of it. And I will say this, and this was incredibly triggering for me to see the first few times that I went into a channeling space and saw it. But we not only enjoy all of our experiences, all of them, but we have asked for them divinely. I went into a channeling space very early on, and it does make me emotional. Where I was sort of astrally taken to a different location where I saw really awful things happening to people. And I saw angels surrounding them, and these really high frequency beings surrounding them and actually holding space to allow it to occur. Whew, it makes me emotional to bring this through, because I was asking why. And I was shown this soul wanted this human experience. This soul asked for it. But once we embody, once we incarnate, it's very hard to have that experience. So all of these beings were holding space for that to occur. And I'll say, when I came out of that channeling space, I was angry for 3 days. Oh, I was so angry that this is what we had decided to do. And it was very hard for me to accept that. And since then, I've been shown so much. I've been shown that simultaneous to every experience that we have is our oversoul and our higher self projecting this and witnessing all of it and loving it and being so grateful that we get the chance to have these myriad of experiences, whether they're joyful or very difficult. So I know that now. I no longer get angry when I see these things, but it is still hard to see sometimes because when we're in it, it feels real. The
It
realms of
does.
suffering,
Such suffering. Gosh.
it feels so real. And that's the purpose. It wouldn't, I was born with pretty severe health issues, and they continued up until pretty recently. And once I started learning how to channel consciously, I would, after my initial awakening, I would go in and just ask for guidance. How do I heal my body? How do I change this? I don't like this. One of the things that I was shown was, because this is my only human incarnation. I haven't done this before. Other people have sent their soul projection into a lot of different human experiences, but I've never done this. I am what's called a starseed. And so I would look at this like, how do I heal my body? And what I was shown is that I incarnated with these very difficult physical things going on, because if I didn't have that experience of pain on a physical level, I literally would not believe in the human experience. I was told, Allison, you'd be so full of joy that you would just be sort of floating around and knowing that none of this was real. So I needed to incarnate with a lot of physical pain to really get myself grounded into this experience of reality. And that way I could be a human and then remember the fullness of who I am, or at least parts of the fullness of who I am, and then start sharing and teaching and guiding from that space. But I needed the experience of pretty intense pain, hospitalization throughout my youth. And, then it came back as I was in adulthood. So a lot to navigate. So I know this one on a personal level. I know that it feels very real. I know that, I mean, pardon the expression, but I know that it sucks. It's awful, and sometimes we don't want to continue to experience it from our human perspective.
Yes, many people say, oh, I would never choose to come back ever.
Man, I wouldn't believe it unless I'd seen it and experienced it in this channeled space countless times. Every time I go into channeling, I'll do channeling for other people or for groups of people. And somebody will ask a question about something very difficult or painful that's going on in their life. And I've had to start explaining to people, if I'm smiling or laughing while I'm channeling for you, I'm not taking your situation lightly. It's because I am in these frequencies where I see that we enjoy it all, that we love it all, and it feels so joyful from that perspective. So I feel very grateful that I've had so many of those experiences where I witnessed from that higher perspective. And also I'm grateful that I've had all these human experiences that have felt awful. I'm grateful for that because it really does allow me to see those perspectives.
Are you coming back again?
I might, I don't know. Something in me feels like I kind of won't. And again, this is me remembering the future, so to speak. But I will say, I hear this a lot. I hear people say, oh, I'm never coming back. Like, why did I do this in the first
Mhm.
place? And I've always said, oh man, it would be so cool to come back. It would be so interesting to have that experience written into my template and that lifetime and that purpose. Like, wow, you know. I mean, it's kind of a fun, silly fantasy, but I dream of, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to come back as to reincarnate as a singer? Because I think that people who can sing are just, it's witnessing people who can sing lights me up.
Yeah.
So I would love to have that ability, or I mean, there's so many really fascinating experiences, and being embodied and having that written into our template, it's such a gift. It's such a gift.
Thank you. So can you explain what a star seed is or what you mean by a star seed? You are a star seed?
Yes. So in the projection from source into different individual experiences, we go through a specific process. Essentially, our soul is created, and that soul gets seeded, or the first soul experience occurs within different areas, landscapes, or dimensional realities. So my soul was seated within the Andromeda galaxy. That means that my initial soul experience, or the oversoul experience, is really within that system. So my divine template is always going to be encoded with where I was seated. It's sort of like if you're born in France, even if the moment that you're born, you move to Spain, you're still always going to have that encodement within yourself of where you were born, where you're from. And this is on a soul level, it's because my divine template is most familiar with that initial soul seeding energetic frequency. And the reason and so now incarnating as a human, I keep getting emotional because it's just the remembrance. As I'm tuning into these frequencies, the remembrance of my home feels so good. So to incarnate in this human experience, then I sent another ray, another aspect of myself into this denser layer, and essentially came to Earth. And this embodiment on Earth, the gift here is that now I have Earth codes. I've been learning how to be a human really my whole life. It did not make any sense to me, even throughout my awakening. Most people, when they go through their awakening, it's like all of this is opening and it's brand new and it's amazing. For me, this was normal. For me, everything that I was channeling, with the exception of a few things that had to do with Earth, it all made so much sense. The frequency that I was embodying at that time made so much sense. Being a human has been the majority of my awakening and ascension process. Grounding into this reality and learning how the earth works has been a major part of my soul growth. And that is so that I am I have these codes now, and it actually makes it so that people can hear me here, because if I was just speaking from my complete star frequency, and sometimes I do, it's difficult for people to receive that. There are a lot of star seeds incarnated on Earth right now because we're going through such a major shift in, the planet is ascending and we're ascending with it. This is a huge shift in human consciousness. And so what was helpful and needed for that shift to occur is a lot of new energy. If you can think about, the game of life has been perpetuating in human form for a while. And the people who have reincarnated into the human game, a lot of people who reincarnated again and again, they start to forget their full soul frequency and start to feel a little bit trapped. That's sort of an illusion, of course. We're never trapped here, but trapped in the denser dimensions and recycling and perpetuating those programs. So a lot of new energy started to come to the planet to help with the awakening, to start to shift so that we could all, because we are each other, we're all God. And so it's sort of like you coming in and saying, hey, other version of myself, remember who you truly are. Let's play this game. Here's a new frequency to start to shake things up a little bit.
It's just mind-blowing and fascinating. There's so many things we're not aware of. So you are, or you have had multiple incarnations on other planets or other universes or dimensions.
Yes. One of my favorite channelings that I received, I would say this was about 3 years into my awakening. This was a really powerful channeling where I was being taught that I did not have any past lives. And previous to my awakening, I had past life regressions, and they felt very real. And so when I went into this channeling and my guidance team came through and said, "You've never been here before." And I said, "Well, what about those past life experiences, those past life remembrances that I had during those sessions?" And they said, "You're so highly empathic that what you did was you actually remembered other souls' past lives." And this is something actually that a lot of starseeds experience, is a high level of a high empathic nature, and also being sort of seated with the remembrance of other people's lives. Now, this is because we haven't had these experiences before. So we sort of need like the Cliff's Notes. So, oh, what did that soul experience? Okay, I'm going to feel it within myself. So it's accelerated learning. And this is true for everyone. Whenever we are empathically experiencing somebody else's experience, it's so that our soul and so that our template can have that divine encoding, so that we, it's sort of like in the Matrix where they just, "Oh, you want to learn Kung Fu? Well, here you go. Here's the program for that."
Right.
So, so that's what I received.
It's very interesting.
It is. It's so fascinating. So this channeling that I had, when I was told that I had never been here before, I was introduced to why I came to Earth. And what I was shown is that outside of human form, and I'm going to name these beings. They've got a lot of misconceptions around them, but I worked with the Anunnaki outside of human form. So when I was in maybe my higher self form, I worked with the Anunnaki, and I came and visited the people on Earth, and I assisted with the creation of the Mayan calendar. So during this channeling, I witnessed myself visiting. So good. I witnessed myself visiting the Mayan people. And of course, my human mind doesn't fully see all of that, but I remember the communication with some of their, divine priests and things like that, and assisted them with creating the Mayan calendar. And what I was told is that I fell in love with the planet. I fell in love with Earth. And I decided to incarnate at the closing of that cycle of the Mayan calendar and assist with the current awakening process. When I received this in channeling, honestly, my mind was blown. It was never something that I would have guessed for myself. I love when I'm surprised in a channeling space, because it shows me it's really beyond my mind. I couldn't have made this up if I tried. Like, that's, to me, such a fantastical story. But that is why I decided to be human.
That's incredible. Incredible. Wow. I can't wait to move on to the future of humanity. But first, congratulations on your book, Ecstatic Playground.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, this book was published late last year, and it is really a roadmap of how do we create on this playground with higher levels of consciousness and therefore more joy. How do we let that ecstatic light move through us and animate us to being our higher selves and to experiencing life in this more ecstatic way? And that's sort of the follow-up book to my first, which is called The Era of the True Creator. And so what I often recommend for people, obviously, listen to your intuition. And the era of the true creator, I feel, serves people who are going through their awakening and starting to move beyond operating within duality and more in oneness consciousness. And then from there, how do we play with life? So ecstatic playground is, how do we start to embody six-dimensional consciousness, which is really superhuman abilities and the ability to play with life and shift all of reality because we're so highly conscious within it.
If you could put it in one sentence, how to play with life, what would you say?
Well, this is the tagline on the book, and it is, from a cosmic perspective, nothing is ever necessary. It is all only ever play. It's all play. We're
Perfect.
playing with we're playing with light. We're letting light dance through our being. We're playing with the illusions that we're currently immersed in. And the game is to become more conscious. And as we become more conscious, we can more consciously choose. We can decide where we place our focus and what we want to experience and how we want to experience it. One of my favorite things to share with people, when we talk about manifestation, which is something that I'm currently talking a lot about, because it's part of our soul's evolution and progression through this human experience. We're creators. So let's learn how to use these tools and actually manifest. A lot of people say that you can't determine how, but that's actually not true. It's just that we can't determine how things manifest from our ego self perspective. When we start to move into our higher self perspective, we get to determine how everything occurs. And the funny thing about that is that we stop wanting or caring how things happen. We're less attached to things, but we can really wield and shift all of reality in a very powerful way when we're of our higher consciousness, when we're operating from our higher consciousness. So it becomes really fun when we're choosing from those levels.
Thank you. Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
So I would say my website, it's AllisonHolley.com. And I've got links for everything on my website, my book, and different events. Right now, I'm actually in 2 days heading out on my East Coast book tour where I have a few stops, and I will be East Coast US, and I will be visiting several people. I know that this will be released later, but I do have a lot of in-person events because a big part of what I'm here to do is activate the ecstatic body or assist in activating the ecstatic body with people. And this is something that's often a sort of energetic transmission. And also, it's just nice in our digital age to be in person with each other. So I do a lot of in-person events. And yeah, everything's linked on my website.
Okay. And people that missed that, I will leave a link below in the show notes. The future of humanity, what's in store?
Yes,
Would you prefer questions or would you like to do a channeling, whatever you feel comfortable with?
I'd love to go into a channeling and
Okay.
fitness. And I want to share with everyone that the intention behind this, behind bringing these messages through, is to provide this feeling of comfort and remembrance. So our souls remember everything that we created for ourselves. And the purpose of me going into these spaces and verbalizing what I see is to bring comfort to our human form of the remembrance that this is what we planned and this is how it could go in its highest possible expression. And to not be afraid, because really so much of this is, it's just a dance. It's a beautiful dance that we are in the middle of. So yeah, it's really the purpose is to bring comfort through these words.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll go ahead and you're welcome to ask questions while I'm in the
Okay.
channeling.
When you pause, I'll ask whatever
Okay,
you feel comfortable with.
okay,
I'll
okay.
leave you to it.
Mm. It's fascinating because as I go into this space with the intention of looking at changes that are going to occur, the first thing that my attention is drawn to is not the destruction, but it's actually the new earth experience that we're creating, which is so beautiful. many beings on the planet have had visions of what I'm about to describe, which is the physical structures and the buildings and the way that our societies are going to be physically structured. We are moving into self-governance. And so the physical representation that I'm seeing right now are these buildings that are really based on sort of dome structures and sacred geometry. I'll describe the vision that I'm having is it's perfectly aligned and in communion with nature. And it's this really beautiful series of domes that are connected in the form of a sacred geometry template. The reason for this is because all of us are based, everything in existence is based on when it moves into a higher vibrational state, it naturally sings in the patterns of sacred geometry. And so we're going to start basing our physical structures on sacred geometry because it is the most harmonious and natural way to be in physical form. We've seen this with cymatics, cymatics, where you play a sound vibration underneath particles. And when that sound vibration is within its own divine structure, divine harmonics, it will form also divine structures in the objects. So it is as the earth vibrates and sings her song, we will begin to start building in harmony with the earth song. So different locations, this is so beautiful, so fascinating. Different locations on the planet, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but they have different vibratory tones. And right now we are experiencing a polarity shift on the planet. So I'm going to revisit that. But as we're experiencing this polarity shift, really what's happening is it's sort of unlocking the planetary chakras or the planetary energetic systems so that more vibratory light can seam through. This is also the purpose of the solar flares, at least one of the purposes of the solar flares. It is a gift from the sun beaming out light codes to activate the planetary structures. So this is why the planet is the sun and the earth, Gaia, is dancing together because the sun is sending out rays and the earth is receiving them and absorbing them. And it's sort of like playing a drum. It's sort of like playing a drum, and it creates, it sheds the denser structures and it creates this vibration that then moves through the planet. Now, to go back to the structures that I was seeing, this vibratory resonance moves through the foundational layers of the planet, and it will sing in its more full tonality. It will sing with more of its full vibration because the denser structures are sort of shaking loose. And as a result, in the future, buildings will be built in harmony with the locations on the planet and the vibratory experience of everywhere on the planet. Oh, this is so good. It's so beautiful. So let's go back to that vibration that's occurring on the planet. The earth and the spirit of Gaia. So we will separate that into two different names. We're naming the same thing, but in two different ways. Earth is more the denser 3D witnessing of the vibration, and Gaia is the spirit. Gaia is the continuation, the eternal spirit of what is now in existence that we are living on and within, called Earth. That delineation is somewhat important because the spirit of Gaia is going through this really powerful expression of now being able to express her ascended form, or this divine being ascended form. And what that's doing is it's breaking up the denser structures. Wow. Which is why there's going to be more water, because water is able to carry the higher vibrational structures. My mind is honestly blown right now. I've never seen that before. It makes sense. I've had so many visions of earth changes, being that there's water on a lot of the planet. Water assists in carrying more malleable, let's see, what's a better word? Water is less dense, and it's able to carry the structures of light more fully. So this is why the planetary shifts are occurring. So let me explain the the actual land masses shifting is what I'm seeing. This is happening because the planet Gaia, the spirit of Gaia, is beaming more light, because Gaia is now able to show herself in a more ascended form. What that means is the denser layers of reality that we're experiencing, they're going to be breaking up and shifting. We witness that within ourselves, as all of the projections that we have created with these denser structures, governmental structures, societal structures, those are structures that are implemented based on programs, and so they're of the more dense layers of reality. That's why that is rapidly shifting. The physical planet, what we call Earth, that is also transforming and shifting. From this higher perspective, it's neutral. It's not for punishment or anything like that. It's simply because the sun and the earth are dancing to allow Gaia's spirit to emanate more fully. And so we witness the denser layers of reality shifting, and it's shifting rapidly from our human perception, because light is very transformative, and we are currently in a time where a lot of light is pulsing through. I feel like I would love to see if you have any questions here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. When you spoke about the dome structures and the water on Earth, what sort of time period are we looking at? How far in the future?
What I'm receiving right now is 1 to 200 years, meaning that the vision that let me see why time is a bit hard for me to look at here. Because it's based on choices. Okay, this is cool. Time is based on choices. We have an inevitable conclusion, meaning the vision that I'm seeing, that is inevitable. We get to decide how long it takes based on our choices. We get to decide how difficult it is based on how much we're attached to the old ways of doing things. If we can let ourselves witness all of what we call destruction in a more loving, even grateful way, if we can witness it like, wow, this is because something new is blooming, and we detach from our perception of it inherently meaning suffering or anything like that, it will allow the structures to, or the light to flow, and everything to form in a much more harmonious, free-flowing way. There is the potentiality for a lot of war on the planet, because as people get uncomfortable with the old structures no longer working, they may choose to hold on to it. They may choose to collectively hold on to the old structures and fight the fight and fight war with war, that sort of thing. So potentially, one of the ways that this whole thing could be expressed is that collectively we have a lot of war based on our resistance, because we're resisting the change. And throughout, it's all very malleable. The expression of these new structures, we do kind of want from a soul level, a little bit of tension through this process, meaning a little bit of the visceral experience of destruction. We want that because it makes it real for our human experience. And so it's okay that all of these things are happening the way that they're happening. The way that these structures are disassembling, that we call destruction, all of that is serving our human self in being able to see so that we know that it's real from our human perspective, that things are changing. There's something very gratifying about that within the human experience. So we will say that, again, the word Kali Yuga comes up. And by the way, when my hands do this, I don't know if it's seen on screen, but this is my biofield flowing. So this is sort of a light attunement that comes through me. We could be seeing these structures. They're already in existence. People are already getting the downloads for them. But in terms of all of society being built this way, it does look like it takes about 100 years. This is because several events that are in queue are set to happen before that. There is quite a bit more earth change and what we would call destruction. And really what it is from this higher perspective is movement and shifting. More of that set to occur. The light codes within water are, they are shifting. Areas where there is flooding occurring, one of the reasons that I'm seeing this happen is because that area is so capable of holding, and in fact, the collective within that area is capable of holding a lot of light. And so the water comes in to cleanse. That's really interesting. The water comes in to cleanse rapidly the old structures. Here is a message for the areas that are experiencing flooding and that will experience flooding. During the rebuild process, attune to the inherent vibratory frequency of the earth and the people that are meant to exist in those areas and build according to those structures. For a while, those structures will still look like the structures that we currently have, but they will be more light attuned until eventually these structures become, it will almost be, so the way that humans currently build is somebody goes out to the land and looks at it and, you know, creates a square or whatever, and then builds a standard home or a building. It's all very linear and sort of impressed upon instead of listening to the land and allowing the land to show you the vibratory structure of the building that's meant to be there. So the progression toward that is that buildings will be encoded with more light. This may mean that they actually have more quartz within them, which allows more light to pass through. And this also could be just that the beings that are within these structures allow themselves to emanate a lot of light without filtering it. I'd love to hear how that's resonating and any
Yes,
questions.
thank you. Gosh, I've got lots of questions now. Well, they're talking about flooding, particularly in Florida in the US. There's an incredible amount at the moment. Would this relate to what you were talking about bringing in more light as well?
Yes. So right now in the US, there were two major areas essentially that were flooded. One of which is not an area that normally gets flooding. And so that's why it's significant to a lot of people here. And what I just saw was that is actually because the beings who inhabit those areas are collectively calling forth these higher structures of light. rapid transformation, and water assists with rapid transformation because it is able to carry light codes so powerfully. So if a lot of light is being called in, sometimes that will mean that earth changes occur more rapidly in that location or nearby to assist in the restructuring. Remember that we're just perceiving these denser layers of reality. The light is pouring in when the denser layers of reality are no longer holding their tight structure. And this includes the mental matrix. This includes the mental structure of the collective within areas. When some sort of natural, what we call natural disaster or upheaval occurs, it's because the collective in that area is also breaking up the density of the mental matrix and allowing that to be more malleable, more shiftable. There's going to be flooding in many areas on the planet. And let's look at that. I'm hearing just, unforetold. So massive flooding.
Thank you.
And this is where our human experience starts to feel afraid, right? This is where we view these things and think, am I safe? There is absolutely nothing that will ever occur, that has ever occurred, or that can ever occur that your soul on a higher level is not absolutely aware of and choosing. So from some vibratory place within your multidimensional self, every experience that you have is a choosing. There are no mistakes and no accidents. If you are involved in one of these experiences and it's very difficult for you, this is not anything around self-blame or punishment from anything. You are absolutely in your perfection. This is part of the natural unfolding of what you are here to experience. Even those who die in these experiences, there are no accidents. There could never be an accident from this higher perspective because there is no opposition to the self. There is no separation from the self. There could never be anything that acts upon the self because there's no opposition. And so we are all of it. And it is all divine and it is all part of our soul journey. There's no accidents, there's no punishment. It is the divine unfolding of the dance that we already planned. It's just that we get to navigate some of these finer details of how it occurs. And again, there can't be any, in the overall structure, there's no mistakes. So everything is going according to plan and with less resistance and less attachment to the stories and the beliefs and the structures that we perceive, the more that things will flow with ease, and we as individual consciousnesses will get to perceive it from that brighter viewpoint. We won't be so worried and we won't be so afraid. So moving into the higher self perspective, not attaching to the stories of what it means, not attaching to the fear, and also just being very present with it and knowing that it's all divine.
Two more questions, if that's okay. You mentioned within the next 100 years, there'll be wars and destructions. Are you able to elaborate on that?
Yes, that'll actually be pretty forthcoming.
Soon.
More soon. That'll be more within the next 50 years or so. And potentially less again. I like to use this example a lot. It's sort of like a kaleidoscope. All of the elements of the kaleidoscope are already within it, but we're learning how to shift to make the picture that we desire. We're learning how to shift all of the structures to make the picture that we desire. So are we shifting it like this or like this? And then as we do that, different actions within the physical come into play. but all of the elements for the end picture are there. So within the next amount of time, not very long, the potential for wars and conflict. And again, this can be to assist in the breakdown of the old structures, the way that things work on Earth. Just like when a tree falls and dies, it breaks down. We're witnessing the physical aspect of the breakdown of these mental structures, these paradigms that no longer work within the higher structures of light. And so whether that happens with a lot of war or a simple acceptance of the things that are breaking down, and then we very easily move into these light structures, or any combination of that, is really up to us as a collective, because each of us are shining our individual light and our own individual perception to contribute to what we call the collective world. So each of us are important. Each of us holding our highest capacity of light is going to assist us in moving into these new earth templates in the way that is the most easeful for us. And also to remember to not be attached. And what does attachment look like? Attachment is really investing in one moment of the unfolding of all and grabbing onto it and making a story about it. That's what attachment is. So we've got this full unfolding of time, but we're going to narrow in and focus on one occurrence and recycle it again and again in our minds and tell the story again and again in our minds about how it's bad. That's what attachment is. So we could do this as, there's a lot of the societal structures that are shifting. We could grab onto it. And for example, here in the US, we could say, oh, that's terrible that it's this person that's being elected, on and on and on, as president, and really grab onto that and have a lot of attachment to that. Or we could let it be and be the witness and see that no matter what occurs, when we are of our highest light, it is all a part of the unfolding process of these new ways of being. So we want to be loose about it, be the witness, not attached, not putting stories on things, not attaching and saying this is bad and we need to look at it again and again and again. Actually, we don't. Witness it as the full structure and then gently navigate our focus to what we prefer. This is how we navigate that. That being said, there are many souls. I will just say this, there are many souls who desired to have a dense experience, who are incarnated at this time to actually be a part of the destruction. They wanted to embody the destruction. They either wanted to cause the destruction through conflict, or they wanted to be an innocent one in the conflict and viscerally experience it. This is because their soul wanted to have these experiences, because there's something very unique about being a human and having the experience of separation to the level that we would cause suffering in another, or that we would experience suffering. And believe it or not, there are souls who have jumped in, are jumping in, who are saying, I just want to experience one aspect of this density of separation for my own soul's greater learning. And there are so many reasons that a soul would do this for their own soul expansion. One would be to take this lesson that we learn here on Earth of destruction and suffering and bring it to another system where something else is occurring, that encodement within the soul would benefit that particular system. It's always for our learning and growth. It's always for our soul expansion, our template, our divine expansion. And so even as we witness suffering, know that each of us are calling in exactly what we wanted, what we signed up for. And that, yes, in this realm of separation where we forget that we did that in the first place, it's not fun. And yes, we do want to act on behalf of the upliftment of all beings, whether that means assisting people in learning what suffering really is, or assisting people physically through their experience. Whatever that is, whatever we're called to do, we will do. And also having this higher frequency perspective that there are no mistakes and no accidents. And every soul is absolutely, to the highest extent possible, benefiting from everything that they experience and witness. And in fact, to believe that they are not is to disregard their God nature. To believe that a soul is accidentally experiencing something is to project this idea that they are not an aspect of God. And that's not possibly true. That can't possibly be true. Everything is an aspect of God. Everything is everything. It's just that the illusion of separation sometimes gives us a filtration of the light, or an illusion is created where we're not seeing the full picture. But it is all divine.
Thank you. And just my final question is, will there be more extraterrestrial and UFO contact on Earth?
Oh, yes.
With Earth?
Oh, yes. Let me tune into this. It's happening right now. It's happening so much right now. Okay, so this is getting into the denser layers of our human experience, and it might sound very strange. Currently, the control structures, meaning there are beings on the planet right now who desire to maintain control. New World Order is something that a group of beings desire to perpetuate. Both human and non-human beings are part of this group. They do want New World Order. They do have a control agenda. And these beings are currently emanating a frequency to the planet, to different locations on the planet, emanating a frequency that causes the illusion to hold. This is a frequency that creates fear and anxiety in the body. We tune into it willingly through, tuning into programming that essentially is fear-based. This is intentional because it creates the vibratory structure that actually blocks us from being able to witness all of the starships and multidimensional beings that are already here on the planet. So as this frequency is emanated into humanity, it lowers our internal frequency and makes it harder for us to see these multidimensional beings and the starships that are already all over, just here with us, visiting, coming and going, and their higher vibrational presence that's outside of the realms of time, or how we know time. That being said, I don't want this message to create more fear, because it's very easy. It may not sound like it, but it's actually very easy to pop out of that sphere of influence, of that fear being projected into the collective, because the heart frequency is infinitely stronger than any of the man-made frequencies that are being created. So it's instantaneous. It's very simple. Tune into the heart. In fact, if you're listening to this, do this now. And in this moment, you are absolutely free. And in this moment, you are absolutely whole, and you are an aspect of God. And from this, do you see that your freedom allows you to navigate the world in a very different way? And so receiving this transmission right now, you will begin to see that our star family, in many, 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 wow, the many different forms of starships that this is taking, It's like an intergalactic party of beings, of vibrational tonalities. We will see so many starships. Tune into your own pure resonance, which is within the heart, to allow yourself to begin to perceive these. It's through presence, it's through purity of the moment. When we're present in the moment, these things are open to us because there's no longer the shield creating the block between ourselves and our higher frequency selves. It's very easy. It's very easy. And this is why it's almost a game or a joke to believe that any sort of control agenda could ever be successful, because it's almost as simple as blinking. Before we blink, it looks like this version of the illusion, and then we blink and we tune into our true selves. We open our eyes and it's completely different. Our soul vibration, our heart vibration, which channels source, is just infinitely stronger than anything that we could be potentially, quote unquote, controlled by. It's just not even possible. It's not possible at all. So let your hearts be light. Literally, let your hearts channel and receive the highest capacity of light, and know that this unfolding can be absolutely joyful. Even if it is not joyful for everyone, it can be joyful for you. And each of us as individuals allowing this unfolding process to be joyful creates the collective.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun for me. I'm just going to close this channeling space out.
Thank
That
you
was a
so
lot of
much,
fun.
Allison. That was amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is
That
there
was,
anything else you'd like to share that I haven't asked you?
I just want to reiterate that each of us are important. Each of us have our own particular vibratory structure that we're here to play in this game, and it's so beautiful. And everything that we see externally is simply a representation of the new emerging. It's just the new emerging. Come together with each other. We can unify. We can love each other through all of the transformation process. And yeah, just a lot of gratitude. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Bye, Allison.
Bye.